5 cubs. That is the number that opens this case, and it is the first detail most accounts get wrong. One night of violence, one fractured pride, and a pale male driven out with a litter that should have been a death sentence. 3 years later, the territory belonged to him again. You need to understand that this is not a story about a beautiful animal overcoming hardship. This is a forensic reconstruction. The scene you need to picture is not the triumphant return. Start with the aftermath, the raw data of the crime. The dust of the savannah still settling, the air thick with blood-oxidized iron and the low mechanical hum of blowflies already locating the wounds. The evidence of the fight is written in the grass, in the scored earth where claws found purchase, in the tufts of pale fur torn loose and drifting. The exile was not a negotiation. It was a verdict, delivered in muscle and teeth. Before we go any further, file away the most crucial piece of context. This male was not just any lion. He carried the recessive gene for a white coat, a rare color morph documented in the wilds of South Africa, specifically in the region of the Timbavati and the greater Kruger ecosystem. That pale pigment is the first clue in our investigation, because it dictates every single decision this animal will make for the rest of his life. It is a target painted on his back in a world that hunts by sight. You are the investigator here, not a spectator. You have to look at the carcass of the old pride structure and ask the hard questions. How do you feed 5 cubs when you are the most visible predator on the plains? How do you claim a territory when every rival coalition can spot you from a kilometer away? The initial assessment is grim. The odds are a stack of evidence against him. And the first piece is the timeline. The exile happened in a single night, in the season of long grass, when the light fails fast and the predators shift their focus. The confrontation would have been a blur of roars and impacts. The brutal calculus of a coalition deciding the pale male was more liability than asset. When the sun rose, he was separated, bleeding from shallow claw rakes across his flanks, and the pride, including the mothers of his cubs, was behind a wall of hostile males. The 5 cubs were his only remaining asset, and they were liabilities. Now, the kinetic detail of the flight. Imagine the sound of it. The crack of dry brush under a panicked retreat, the harsh, sucking breath of a male running while injured, the thin, rasping cries of the cubs struggling to keep pace. They moved away from the core territory, heading for the margins where the dominant males would not bother to follow. That margin, that buffer zone between prides, is where the investigation truly begins. It is a dead zone, a place of scavengers and desperate animals. But here is the immediate contradiction you must log. The white coat is not the handicap it appears to be in every situation. In the deep, dry grass of the late season, against the pale, sun-bleached earth, the white fur breaks up his silhouette in a way that the tawny coat does not. It is a specific situational advantage in a landscape that is itself fading to white. You would think this evens the odds. You would be wrong because the cubs do not have that luxury of context. The 5 cubs, half-grown and awkward, are tawny. They carry the recessive gene, but do not express it, which means they blend into the long grass perfectly. But they are tethered to a beacon. Every hunt, every movement, the pale male is the point of light that draws the eye of every rival and every potential threat. He has to change the rules of engagement. The evidence of this is in the tracks he leaves, the uncharacteristic patience, the way he moves not as a king of beasts, but as a shadow that knows it is being watched. Let's pause the reconstruction for a moment and look at the pattern of the kills. A normal pride male relies on the females to do the hunting. He feeds off their success and defends the carcass. This male cannot afford that luxury. The females are gone, sequestered with the new coalition. He is the sole provider. The kill sites you would examine tell the story. They are not the open, bold kills of a confident pride. They are ambushes, rushed, inefficient, dragged quickly into cover. You can see it in the disturbance of the soil, the shallow, scrabbling tracks of a chase that did not last long, the blood trail that leads not to an open savanna where the pride can feed in peace, but into the thick, thorny brush where the pale male can drag the carcass into darkness. He is not hunting for dominance. He is hunting for survival, and the strategy is entirely reactive. But the clock is ticking, because a male lion cannot sustain the energy output of constant hunting and constant vigilance for long. He is burning through his reserves. You just examined the kill site evidence of a strategy that has no name in the predator playbook. Subscribe now to follow the rest of the reconstruction as we piece together why this male broke every rule of lion survival. In the comments, drop the single word that hits you first when you picture a predator burning through his last reserves in the dark. If you have ever felt that the natural world has been sanitized into a cartoon, you know the anger of realizing the truth is far more brutal. The documentaries show you the circle of life with a soft filter. They do not show you the panic in the eyes of a father who knows he is the reason his offspring are targets. They do not show you the desperation of a predator that has to break its own rulebook just to see the next sunrise. This is that reality. The cubs are the second piece of the evidence chain, and they are nearly as complex as the father. They are at the age where they are too big to be easily carried, but too small to contribute meaningfully to a hunt. They are consumers, and their hunger is a constant, gnawing pressure on the pale male's strategy. You have to ask yourself, as the investigator, what is the survival rate for a single male trying to raise cubs alone? The answer, based on the observational data of wild lion populations, is brutally low. Most such cases end the same way. The male succumbs to injury or starvation. The cubs scatter, becoming prey for hyenas or leopards. The bloodline ends. This case is different, and the divergence is found in a specific, almost invisible detail in the behavior. The pale male did not try to fight the system. He did not try to take on the rival coalition head-on. He chose to exploit the seams of the territory map. The buffer zone where he was hiding was not empty. It was a contested space between two larger prides, a no-man's land where patrols were infrequent and the scent markings were confusing. In that space, the white coat became a cloak of invisibility. The tawny lions hunting in the rich core territories did not patrol the margins. Why would they? There was less prey, more risk. And so, the exile found a niche. He learned the rhythms of the interlopers. He learned the times when the hyena clans were active, the times when the rival males were distracted by the females in heat. He exploited the gaps in the human perception of the landscape, but more importantly, he exploited the gaps in the lion social structure. He was not the strongest. He was the most observant. Now, we need to introduce a sub-loop that will challenge your assumptions about what makes a successful predator. We asked earlier, what makes a lion exile and survive? The common answer is brute force. The bigger the male, the more likely he is to win. But the evidence here points to a different mechanism. It points to a neurological adaptation, a capacity for problem-solving that is rarely tested in the wild, because the social structure of a pride usually solves those problems for the individual. Forced into solitary existence, the pale male had to develop what we might call a tactical intelligence. He had to think like prey to catch prey. He had to think like a scavenger to avoid becoming one. And he had to think like a territorial male to eventually claim a space that was defensible. The 3-year timeline is the key to unlocking this puzzle. By the time a third of that timeline has passed, the cubs have grown. They are no longer the small, vulnerable creatures that stumbled after him in the dark of the exile night. They are subadults, testing their strength, beginning to understand the mechanics of the hunt. The pale male has survived, which is more than most would have predicted. But survival is not the same as rebuilding a territory. The title of this case demands a bolder outcome. Let's re-anchor on the claim we are investigating. Exiled with 5 cubs, rebuilt the territory in 3 years. Is that accurate? Or is it an exaggeration woven into the legend? The evidence must be examined critically. The first layer of support comes from the simple fact of the cubs' survival to independence. For all 5 to reach the age of dispersal, the father had to provide consistent, reliable nutrition. That is not a matter of luck. That is a matter of a successful hunting strategy, repeated over hundreds of hunts. The second layer of evidence is in the territorial markings we can still observe. The scrape marks on the trees, the urine deposits on prominent rocks, are the signature of a male who is not just passing through, but establishing a claim. And the placement of those marks is telling. They are placed not in the rich heart of the old territory, but in a ring around the buffer zone, a perimeter that the pale male is slowly expanding. He is not waiting for permission. He is building a fortress. By the halfway point of the 3 years, the pale male has achieved something remarkable. He has become the apex predator of the margin. He has driven out the smaller scavengers, the jackals and the solitary hyenas that once harassed him. He has created a stable environment where his cubs can learn to hunt without constant interference. The white coat, once a liability, is now the symbol of a new order in this marginal land. What does this tell us about the nature of survival? It tells us that the rules are not fixed. They are responses to pressure. The exile did not break under the pressure. He adapted to it. The evidence of the kill sites shift. In the first year, the kills are small, desperate. In the second year, they are larger, more confident. In the third year, they are the kills of a dominant male, unafraid to feast in the open for a short while before dragging the carcass into cover. The confidence is earned, but the escalation is not without cost. The pale male carries the scars of his tenure. The forensics of his body tell the story of 100 close calls, the notch in his ear from a hyena's bite, the deep scar across his muzzle from a fight over a kill, the missing claw on his right forepaw, a structural weakness that he has adapted around. These are not signs of weakness. They are the trophies of a survivor. The body records every near miss. Those scars are data points. A missing claw, a torn ear, each a timestamp of violence survived. Subscribe and we'll keep reading these forensic records of the wild, one crime scene after another. In the comments, tell me what the missing claw tells you about his hunting strategy today. How does a lion adapt his grip when he loses that lever? Consider the pressure he is under as the cubs approach maturity. They are now nearly his size. They are testing their dominance over each other, play fighting with increasing violence. The pale male has to manage this new dynamic. He has to keep the peace, while also preparing them for the inevitable moment when they will leave to find their own territories. He is not just a father. He is a warden of a transitional power structure. The rivals have not forgotten him. The coalition that exiled him still patrols the core territory, but they have grown complacent. The scent of the pale male and his growing family wafts into their domain, a provocation that is increasingly difficult to ignore. The tension is rising. The investigation is approaching the climax, where the peripheries of the territory will be tested. You have to think about the physics of this. A coalition of males holds a territory by patrolling the borders, by responding to scent marks, by enforcing their will through violence. The pale male is making a calculation. He is betting that his rivals, grown fat and lazy on the easy prey of the core territory, will not have the stamina to challenge him in the rough margins he calls home. The evidence suggests he is right. The territorial boundaries begin to shift. The tracks of the rival males become less frequent near the buffer zone. They are drawing back, consolidating their hold on the safe, familiar ground, and the pale male pushes forward, not recklessly, but with the patience of a predator who knows that the final victory is not won in a single battle, but in the accumulation of position. The 3-year mark is approaching, and the scene is set for the final act. The pale male is no longer an exile. He is a claimant. The cubs are nearly full-grown, a formidable force in their own right. The question that has driven this investigation, can he rebuild a territory, is about to be answered not with a whisper, but with a roar that echoes across the boundary lines. But here is the detail nobody expected. The territory he reclaims is not the one he lost. He does not return to the heart of the old Pride lands. He does not even try. Instead, he annexes the buffer zone, the very ground of his exile, and turns it into a fortress. He raises his flag, not where the old castle stood, but on the battlefield where he was left for dead. That is the tactical genius of the 3-year plan. He built the new kingdom from the ground up, using the debris of his own downfall as the foundation stones. You can read the strategy in the geometry of the territory itself now. The old Pride lands had a center, a reliable water source ringed by open grazing. The new kingdom has no such luxury. It is a crescent of thicket and rocky outcrop, shaped around the margins, defensible from 3 sides. That is not a weakness. That is a design born from the specific constraints of a visible predator who could never afford to be caught in the open. Look closer at the rock formations he chose. They are not the highest points, not the dramatic copiers that photographers love. They are low, broken shelves of stone with narrow approaches. A single male can hold a choke point against multiple attackers. The cubs can scramble to the top when danger comes. Every element of this new territory is a response to the question of how to survive when you cannot outrun a threat and cannot hide in plain sight. The water source deserves its own note in the file. A shallow, seasonal pan that fills only after the rains, unreliable by Pride standards. The pale male dug it deeper, widening the basin with his paws over countless dry nights. That is the kind of evidence we do not see in the documentaries. Observed behavior, repeated over time, that reshapes the environment to fit the predator's needs rather than the other way around. Now the investigation turns to the cubs themselves, because they are the true measure of whether this 3-year project will outlast its architect. They have reached the age where the bond with the father begins to fray. The playfights are no longer games. They are assessments, silent negotiations of rank that will determine who leaves first and who stays to challenge the old male for the kingdom he built. You have seen this dynamic before, in the records of other solitary males who managed to raise offspring alone. The moment of dispersal is rarely clean. It is marked by tension, by a sudden coldness in the father's behavior, by the deliberate withdrawal of protection. The pale male knows the script. He has been on both sides of it, the exile and the exiler. He knows that his sons must leave, and he knows that they may not survive. But there is a second possibility, and it is the one that keeps this case from closing neatly. The daughters. In the normal pride structure, daughters remain with the maternal line, inheriting the territory and the social network. Here, there is no maternal line. The daughters have only the father, and that creates a different kind of pressure, a biological imperative that the pale male cannot ignore, even as the paternal bond tells him to protect them. The evidence of this tension is in the scent marks. They are changing. The father's signature is still dominant, but there is a new note in the mixture, a chemical signal from the daughters that they are approaching reproductive age. The rivals in the core territory can read this signal as clearly as we can. It is an advertisement, a challenge. The pale male has succeeded in raising his cubs to viability. Now he must defend the proof of that success. The rivals make their move around the 2.5-year mark. The tracks tell the story clearly. A patrol of 2 males moving along the old boundary, testing the scent markers that the pale male has so carefully laid. They are not attacking. They are gathering information. They are counting the odds, assessing the size of the coalition they would face if they pushed into the crescent. This is where the tactical intelligence becomes visible, because the pale male responds with something that looks almost like diplomacy. He does not charge the patrol. He does not roar a challenge that would invite a response. Instead, he moves his own scent marks forward, a few meters at a time, overlapping the rival patrol's line. He is sending a message that reads, "This territory is already claimed," and the claimant is not bluffing. The patrol withdraws. It is not a victory. It is a deterrence, a successful negotiation of space without the cost of a fight. And that is, in its own way, more impressive than any battle, because the pale male has learned that the territory is not just a physical space. It is a psychological construct, a belief held by the other predators that this ground is not worth the cost of contesting. You can see the same principle at work in the way he handles the hyena clan. The clan is a permanent presence on the margins, a scavenging force that can turn into a hunting force when the opportunity presents. We have already noted the early harassment, the drives to steal his kills. But now, in the 3rd year, the relationship has shifted. The clan does not follow him anymore. They follow the cubs from a distance, and they do not move closer. The pale male has established a new rule in the margin. He does not kill hyenas. He does not waste energy on a fight that would leave him exposed. Instead, he ignores them, deliberately, conspicuously, until the moment when a hyena oversteps and is met with a single devastating charge. The clan learns that his patience has limits. The lesson is encoded in the pack's behavior for a generation. Now the 3-year mark is not a storybook ending. It is a ledger. The accounts are balanced. 5 cubs, raised to dispersing age, a feat that the data on solitary male lions would have called near impossible. A territory carved from nothing, defended and held. A genetic line that should have been extinguished, carrying the recessive white gene into a new generation, scattered across the landscape where it may or may not survive. The final piece of evidence is the quietest. It is the absence of the pale male's tracks from the core territory. He does not visit. He does not return. The old pride lands, the ones he was driven from, hold no pull for him. That is the mark of a predator who has fully redefined himself. He is not an exile waiting to be redeemed. He is the founder of a new line, and his kingdom is where he stands. That quietest evidence, the pale male never setting foot in his old territory again, is the final piece that closes this file, but it opens a larger question about how many other predators rewrite the rules we mistake for law. Subscribe now so you walk the next crime scene with me, where another set of tracks will force us to rethink what we know. Drop the word rewritten in the comments if this investigation changed how you see solitary lions, because I need to know who's ready for the harder cases. The legacy, then, is not the territory. The territory will be contested and carved up within a year of his passing, likely by the very sons he raised. The legacy is the proof, written in the survival of 5 tawny lions, that the rules of this brutal world are not fixed. They are suggestions, revised by those with the patience and the nerve to rewrite them under pressure. And you, sitting here with the evidence laid out, you already know the verdict. The verdict, when you lay it out flat like a forensic map, is stranger than the legend. The exile was not a punishment that he endured. It was a filter that he passed through, leaving behind every assumption a pride lion carries. What emerged on the other side was not a broken male scrabbling for scraps. It was a specialist, evolved by pressure, adapted to a niche that no other lion in the region could occupy. Consider the final snapshot of the crime scene, the one you would file under resolution. The crescent territory is quiet. The seasonal pan holds water, deepened by a season of patient labor. The scrape marks on the low rock shelves are fresh, a signature that is now a known quantity in the margins. The sons have dispersed, moving outward to test their own luck against the world that nearly killed their father. The daughters remain, the new core of a lineage. This is where the sub-loop about the Cubs closes, but it does not shut cleanly. The survival of the daughters is not guaranteed. They carry the recessive gene, the same pale marker that marked their father as a target. They may express it, or they may not. They may find a coalition that accepts them, or they may face the same brutal calculus of exile. The genetic thread is thin, scattered across a landscape that is indifferent to its persistence. But the evidence we have gathered does not allow for sentiment. It demands a final, cold accounting. The pale male did not defeat his rivals in a single glorious battle. He did not reclaim the heart of the old Pride lands. He did not rewrite the rules of lion society. What he did was far more durable. He exploited a seam in the terrain, a gap in the social structure, and he held it long enough to pass on his genes. That is the only currency that matters in this world. The 3-year timeline, then, is not a story of triumph. It is a story of arithmetic. 5 cubs, 1 male, 1 marginal territory, and the relentless pressure of time. The arithmetic is brutal, but it is also precise. He did not outfight the system. He outcalculated it. And in a world where the strong are constantly tested by the stronger, the ability to calculate is the rarest weapon of all. You came to this case expecting to find a king. Instead, you found a strategist. You came expecting to see a comeback story, the exiled hero reclaiming his throne. The evidence shows you something else, a creature that stopped being a prince and became an architect. The throne was never the goal. The goal was the survival of the line, and that goal was met with a cold, unwavering focus. The savannah does not care about the verdict you have reached. The sun will rise over the crescent territory, the pan will hold its water, and the scrape marks will slowly fade into the rock. The pale male will eventually succumb, to injury, to age, to the sons he raised returning to test him. The territory will be redrawn, the borders will shift, and the memory of this particular exile will dissolve into the general noise of the ecosystem. But you are not the savannah. You are the investigator, and the investigator keeps the file. The file holds the tracks, the wound patterns, the scent marks, the geometry of a fortress built from the debris of a downfall. The file holds the answer to the question that opened this case. A single male, exiled with 5 cubs, rebuilt a territory in 3 years. The evidence confirms it, but the evidence also adds a footnote that the legend misses. The footnote is this: the territory he rebuilt was never the one he lost. The kingdom he created was never the one he was born into. He did not restore what was taken from him. He built something new in the space where he was left for dead, and he built it so well that it held long enough to do its job. The pale coat, the target painted on his back, became the foundation stone of a new order. The blowflies that opened this case have long since moved on. The blood-oxidized air has cleared from the grass. The tracks you followed have been erased by weather and time, but the pattern remains, carved into the behavior of the 5 lions who carry his genes and the territory that bears the marks of his patience. The crime scene has gone quiet. The case is closed, and the verdict is written in the only language this world respects: cold evidence.